Hello, everyone. This is Casey back again with Aligned Astrology. Today we are experiencing the full moon in the sign of Aquarius. Now, this full moon is concluding our lunation cycle. Well, it's the culmination point before we move forward into our next new moon in Leo, which is going to start off our eclipse season. But today we want to talk about this full moon in Aquarius and bring to light some of the planetary bodies present. We have this Jupiter Cazimi today, as well as the moon in conjunction with Pluto. So Jupiter is opposing Pluto while this new moon or this full moon is going on. So when we think about Jupiter entering into a Cazimi with the sun, we must remember that prior to this Cazimi, the Jupiter is combust. It's under the beams of the sun as the sun applies to Jupiter, because the sun's a faster moving planet. Once the sun enters within an 8-degree orb range of Jupiter, it enters into combustion, meaning it's a very challenging time for the Jupiter. But that Jupiter can be seen as having a wonderful exaltation phase, we can call it, as it enters into this Jupiter Cazimi. So Jupiter is strengthened and lightened in this way. But remember, it's in opposition with Pluto. So this can bring to mind many different things. But first, let's talk about Jupiter and how it can begin to express as it conjoins with the sun in the sign of Leo. Jupiter, prior to this Cazimi, was combust and in a form of dying. You can call this the phase of death into the phase of rebirth. So it's very interesting how prior to this Cazimi with the combustion, Jupiter seems to be dying and entering into this new synodic cycle, but also in opposition with Jupiter. It's like a kind of like the Christ story, right? When Jesus was crucified on the cross and died, they said he went down into hell or the infernos to gather the 7 keys in order to return, and he was born again. So we can see Jupiter in this way, dying and going to meet with Hades or Pluto. It's very interesting. But the way it's going to show up in our own lives is very different from the Christ story. Maybe, right? Everybody has their own experience. Maybe something maybe going along, coming along in our lives in that way. Not so intense, hopefully not. But when we begin to notice Jupiter conjoining the sun under the light of the sun in the throne room of the king, we could say. Jupiter in the sign of Leo is a place where we can be seen, right? We can become very boisterous, very full of life and energy, and want to share and express. And everybody's going to be able to look, listen, and hear what we have to say. So, in this case, with Jupiter Cazimi, it can be our time to shine. It can give us many different opportunities to be seen, to expand this part of our life, wherever Jupiter may be landing in our own zodiac chart, what planets it may be aspecting at this point in time that we enter to this Jupiter Cazimi. But when we reach a point of possible fame or maybe even strong egoic expression, we can see it like this as well, because Jupiter may know exactly who it is and what it wants and wants to share it with people, and it may be can come off in a strong egoic manner. But with Pluto in opposition here, we can begin to find what tension is being created, the push and pull in our experience, what persons are showing up, what relationships are showing up to diminish this egoic expression that we may be offering at this point in time. How is Pluto revealing something that may have been present this entire time, just moving under the radar of our own awareness, our own consciousness? Pluto in the sign of Aquarius, like we know, is fairly new here for us in this time of our lives. Pluto hasn't been here in this lifetime for many of us, most of us actually. So when we think about Pluto in the sign of Aquarius in opposition to this Jupiter and Sun Cazimi, Pluto is a great revealer. We can think of Pluto or Hades as the planet of riches. It brings wealth. It's a hidden expression of great value and great benefits that can be presented into our experience. A lot of the times when we think about Pluto, we think about fear and death and hardship. But Pluto is a planet of riches. It's going to show us things in our lives that have the potential to transform us in a great way. This Pluto in Aquarius can cause us to feel like we have an outlook on life that is far greater than the people around us. So, to the benefit of this Jupiter Cazimi and opposite with this Pluto in Aquarius, we can begin to know what's true about ourselves and our lives and the relationships that we find ourselves in. We can begin to notice a truth. And that's what Jupiter wants. Jupiter wants to experience the truth. And as Jupiter enters into this Cazimi once again, it has its own truth already that it wants to express and it's sharing it. But this opposite tension with Pluto in conjunction with the moon, where it can lead to great emotional realization or psychological realization and transformation, can bring these things to surface. We can begin to notice that whatever we may have deemed as our strong truth can change rapidly in this moment. This full moon culmination can give us an experience that allows for a transformation of this magnitude to help us go into a complete opposite direction with something, to help us realize something about ourselves, and we can make a change. So, friends, we want to look at the astrology chart, and we're going to talk about all 12 zodiac signs. But it is important for us to begin to notice how these things play a part in our lives before we start to look at our own particular zodiacal chart, how it correlates with our own rising sign. When Pluto and the moon are conjoined one another, the emotions come to surface with clarity and understanding. In the sign of Aquarius, we must take other people into consideration, as Aquarius is the fixed air sign, the fixed yang air sign of the zodiac. We must remember to take into consideration how we communicate with people, how we lead a conversation, how our minds can begin to change and transform through these experiences. This is a full moon in Aquarius that we get to experience. And that Jupiter Cazimi can be expanding this experience. As Jupiter has entered into this throne room of the king in the sign of Leo, we can ask ourselves, what truth is it that we've been living by? And we can ask ourselves, who needs to hear this truth? And then, when we begin to ask ourselves what this truth is, who needs to hear this truth, we can begin to notice how we are and have been sharing this truth over the past weeks as Jupiter had entered under the beams of the sun. And we can ask ourselves, have we been taking on a sense of domination? Have we been sharing ourselves in a way that may be harmful to others around us? This Pluto is going to show us. This full moon is bringing some things to light. We can notice ourselves clearly, and we can begin to learn something from this transit. This is one of the most intense full moons of the year because we have these slow-moving, powerful planets, Jupiter and Pluto, in the mix. So let's take a look at these horoscopes for all 12 signs. Now, we're going to start with Aries. Now, right before we begin to speak about this full moon, just to simply speak for a moment, Aries Risings, Saturn has just went retrograde in your first house. So, our ability to respond, our response ability, is asking us to slow down, to take a moment, to go back to the drawing board, to reconsider particular things. And this full moon is in our 11th house of community, of good fortune. That Saturn is in rulership over your sign of Aquarius, where this full moon is present. So, this 11th house of good fortune or communities, acquaintances, is giving us something to look at. We can ask ourselves, where do I need to pause? Where do I need to change the way I preach to a community, the way I share myself in a community? As that Jupiter Cazimi is in the fifth house of creativity, of romance, of all things creation, we can begin to see what are we offering to a community. What have we been mixing up? What is our truth? And this truth can look like anything. So, is it beneficial? Is it something that may have been harmful? As we notice this full moon in the sign of Aquarius, we need to look at it from our own standpoint. We need to look at it from a place of our own character. As Aries Risings, a place of how we see our own selves. This is a great opportunity for us to see something that needs to be revealed, something that needs to come up from the surface. As Jupiter, like we said earlier, Jupiter has entered into the throne room of the king, but it has went through that dying process already. So when something dies, it goes somewhere else, right? This is the beginning of a new synodic cycle that is occurring. And as we enter into this new synodic cycle, what has had to die, and what is being born again? Maybe we need to look at our community connections to see what needs to be let go of, what's being planted, what's growing now, what's expanding in our form of creativity. Aries rising. Taurus, you receive this full moon in the 10th house, this full moon in the 10th house of Aquarius. And when we have the Aquarius in the 10th house, it can lead to a network we have access to, a community of people who we share ourselves with as a career or as a public figure, whatever the case may be. Saturn, the ruler of this full moon, is in the 12th house. And with Saturn being retrograde in its fallen house in the sign of Aries in our 12th house, we must take traditional astrology into consideration. As a traditional astrologer, we know that Saturn is not so hot in the sign of Aries. It's considered to be fallen, a very challenging place for the planet, because it takes on exact opposite characteristics where it feels comfortable. But when Saturn is in a 12th house, it's also considered to be in its planetary joy. So Saturn here in this place of exile gives us an opportunity to look behind the scenes, to go into our own subconscious, to take the time for ourselves to see where we need to slow down, where we need to reorder things. And when we notice this place of exile, right, we also can take into consideration our 4th house. The 4th house can also be seen as a place of solitude. And this is where our Jupiter Cazimi rests. And as the sun applies to Jupiter and brings it into the throne room of the king, we can begin to build from this place of solitude, the connection with our family, the connections that we have with our own self. Because when we think about the sign of Leo, as opposed to the sign of Aquarius, Leo is more about me, right? Leo is more about the individual, whereas Aquarius is about the collective. So what what are we learning from ourselves in our moments of stillness, in our moments of silence, that we can take out into the public, into this 10th house role, and be vulnerable, bring these things up to surface and share them, so that way we can reveal the truth of who we are, what we've learned about ourselves from the depths of our experience, and take it out into the public and really gain from it, because this is where the riches, the true wealth is. Taurus, now we're going to experience Gemini. Gemini rising. You have this full moon in the sign of Aquarius in your ninth house, the ninth house of higher learning. And let's talk about the standpoint of higher learning. We go to school as children, and we have an interest in things. Even before school, we have a desire to learn and gain. Think about a baby. A little baby's born into this world and sees everything like new, because it's brand new to a newborn baby. Like, so when we begin to, as an adult, learn what it means to see everything new, we enter into that form of higher learning. When we don't have that capability, we tend to stop learning. And when we stop learning, that's when the death process begins. We start to die. So when we take into consideration this full moon in the sign of Aquarius in our ninth house, we can notice what Pluto may be revealing here. When Pluto comes into contact, into conjunction with the moon, there's something that is revealed, and the moon is correlated with our physical body, it's correlated with our mind, it's even correlated and mostly correlated with our emotion. It can be our instinctual nature, right? It is the luminary that is hidden. So we think about these emotions, our way of being in this case, naturally, without a thought. This is our initial expression. So when Pluto comes in a conjunction with the moon, we can notice what lights us up. What's the guide? What's the guidance here in this case? Where are we being called to move towards? And what emotional bout, what form of intensity may show up or may have already shown up over the last few days, over the next few days, that's going to cause us to see what we want to move towards, what learnings we want to gain, where we may want to travel, need to travel in order to experience something different. Maybe there's a conversation. Because when we start to look at this full moon in Aquarius, we need to take into consideration once again the ruler, which is in a sign of Aries in retrograde, correlated with a good fortune or the community we may be connected to. So that helps us to know that whatever it is that we may be facing now, whether seemingly very challenging or intense, it can lead to something that is going to be tremendously beneficial for us. Something that is going to produce some diamonds, that is going to give us some riches. And riches don't always constitute as financial gain. Riches come in many different forms. It can come in the form of peace, happiness, clarity, understanding. With that Cazimi in the third house of our day-to-day workings, we can see the great benefits that are being presented to us in our daily life. And as we begin to stand on those benefits, we stand on this new way of experiencing life, this new form of expansion and expression from the standpoint of a Leo. We can begin to share this in our form of expression in the ninth house. If we think about the third house as our writing, our planning, our researching, we can think about the ninth house as our broadcasting, our expanding and sharing to the collective. So Gemini rising, we can know there's great benefit that can come from this one. There's an understanding, a learning, an opportunity to share ourselves genuinely in a new way, especially since we've had Uranus, we had the Mars-Uranus conjunction, these different things moving through our first house. Over the next 7 years, we're going to be different. Gemini rising, truly. Cancer rising, you have this full moon in Aquarius in the eighth house of transformation, of the debts, of karma, the karmic relationships. A lot lately, I've been looking at the eighth house as the place of karma. And karma is something that is very vast. We simply can see karma as cause and effect, right? Action, reaction. But it goes so much deeper. When we think about this eighth house in this way, we can tend to notice that when life happens, when life occurs, and things happen, there is something that was a precursor. So having a full moon in Aquarius in the eighth house conjoining Pluto, we can see that what actions we may have taken to lead us to this point. Where can we see the beginning of the story? A lot of the times, if something challenging or bad happens in our lives, we usually look for somebody to blame. We usually look where we can point a finger. But when we point a finger, remember that you see these other fingers, there's 3 more fingers pointed back at me because the thumb's not pointing this way, right? There's 3 fingers pointed back at me. So when you point the finger, you need to point the finger at yourself and realize that there's always a cause to an effect. So Cancer Risings, we can ask ourselves, where have I been placing the blame elsewhere? With the moon, the ruler of our own chart, coming in conjunction with Pluto, we can tend to see these things through the eyes of another. So when we start to look at the second house of the things connected to us, as Jupiter joins the sun in the throne room of the king in the second house for us, we can tend to see that we've been placing a lot of eggs in our own basket. Maybe we've been focusing on ourselves a bit too much and not on the people around us. And when we think about that as Cancer Rising, it doesn't usually work like that, right? The Cancer is the nurturing mother-like energy. But the Cancer Rising also needs to make sure that their cup is filled first if you want to be able to share and support with the people around you. So it's like an even give and take. We support ourselves and we share and support the people around us. We must remember that this full moon is ruled by Saturn, which is in our 10th house of career, our 10th house of public role. So we can ask ourselves, where have we been trying to climb that ladder? Where have we been pushing too hard in order to achieve some things and not taking into consideration the support that we need in order to make sure that we can reach the heights that we deserve? Saturn's retrograde here in the 10th house right now, so here's our time to really see. Next, Leo Rising. Leo Rising. This full moon has landed in your 7th house of one-on-one relationships. In traditional Hellenistic astrology, the 7th house is also seen as the place of endings. And as this place of endings, the moon conjoined Jupiter can tend to reveal an emotional finale, we can say. It can bring up something from relationship connection that has been lying dormant, a conversation that can occur that can help us to see a truth revealed, the truth about ourselves, the truth about our relationship, a truth about our past, something that can allow us to be free, be liberated from a particular experience or psychological bout or misunderstanding. It is a great benefit to experience something like this, as the full moon in Aquarius is ruled by the 9th house. I mean, not the 9th house, but ruled by Saturn in the 9th house. And since that Saturn is retrograde in the sign of Aries, we're reconsidering things. We're reconsidering things we may have learned, we may have taken on as truth. And maybe there is a one-on-one relationship connection that is closing the door to that truth, is opening the door to a new experience, a new responsibility, a new understanding and way of being. With Jupiter Cazimi in our own first house, there is a character, a characteristic that we have been upholding, that we may feel is our true self, that we fight for day in and day out. And this full moon can be shining that light back onto ourselves to help us realize maybe this isn't who I am. Maybe that person, it's time for that person to change. And remember, friends, the next lunation cycle is eclipse season. That new moon in Leo is in our first house. So that change is coming. This is the time of letting go. Virgo rising. Friends, you have this full moon in the sixth house of health, of service, and of work. Our daily efforts towards a perceived goal. And when we achieve that goal, the work continues to uphold that goal, to uphold that thing that we want. Now, this sixth house, this Aquarian sixth house of the Virgo rising, is a collective place. It's a community that we wish to serve. Virgo can be seen as the great teacher, and the ruler of Virgo, Mercury, is in the sign of Cancer in the 11th house of community. So we can begin to talk about where we are in service to a collective, to a group, to a class of people that we share with. The ruler of this full moon, Saturn, is in the 8th house of karma, karmic debts, the esteem of others, how we receive from other people. And in this case, it is our responsibility to give, right? We are giving something. We are sacrificing. We are serving a collective in this way. And with that moon in conjunction with Pluto, something's being revealed from our efforts, from our work. And since we have Jupiter Cazimi in the 12th house, which is usually very hard to comprehend, very hard to see, Jupiter in the 12th house is a place of exile. It's a place of subconsciousness. But when we have a Cazimi and Jupiter here, our subconscious can begin expanding. We can begin to notice something in our dreams. We can begin to notice something in our relationships. And in the eyes of the collective that we serve, we can begin to see ourselves. So when we think about this collective energy brought to us by a full moon in the sign of Aquarius, we can ask, how are we showing up? What needs to change? How do we need to be free from this old way of being? As this Cazimi, Jupiter Cazimi, is inviting us to show up differently. He's inviting us to change, to go into our place of solitude, to see ourselves and share ourselves truly, authentically. Libra rising, friends, has full moon in Aquarius in the 5th house of creativity, of romance. As those of you who are the Libra rising, you notice the benefit of relationship, the benefit of connection, working with others. The 5th house of creativity in this place is in a collective sign. Aquarius loves, supports, and connects with the collective. The moon conjunction with Pluto is revealing something about our creative endeavors, our creative efforts, our romance, our relationships. It's showing us something here. Having that Jupiter Cazimi in the 11th house can show that we're being seen now. We're standing on our soapbox, full of this light, full of this glory to expand and grow in a collective, in a community. But we have to remember that we can be seen for this greatness, but this opportunity that we have, it came from somewhere. It came from a collective. It came from a relationship. It came from an opportunity. And with that moon conjunct Pluto in this place, we remember, we get to remember who supported us, who opened the door for us, who allowed us to create this experience. Because remember, without the people around us, we don't have the things that we do. Regardless of who we are, what we've achieved, it is not possible without the community, without the collective, without the people around us. It doesn't exist. So remember, friends, in this state, this full moon in Aquarius can show us to remember the people we connect with, to remember the people who receive what we create, the people we create with. Scorpio Risings have this full moon in Aquarius in the 4th house. Now, me as a Scorpio Rising, noticing this place of solitude, this place of internal experience. It can also notice the equal tension of the public world with the internal world. And with a Jupiter Cazimi in the 10th house, there is much room, much opportunity to be seen, to share, to enter into new phases of life, into new phases of work and creation. And as these phases come, as these truths can be shared publicly, there is also intentional connection, intentional family dynamics that must be approached, conversations that must be had, recollections of previous experiences must be recalled in order to share authentically, to share completely, noticing that all things that are seen in the light started from the root, started from the dirt, and grew and flourished. The truth comes from the inside out. And Scorpio rising with Saturn retrograde in the 6th house, our daily efforts, the work that we put in, must be done behind the scenes. Nobody sees the work that you do, right? Of course people can see what you do, but when no one's watching, we can ask ourselves, are you doing the work? Are you putting the effort in to achieve the things that you want? These things start at the beginning, and that work can be seen in the family dynamic. It can be seen in the work of the physical body, of the health of the physical body, whatever it is that we are looking to achieve, looking to share in our lives as Scorpio Risings. It all starts with some effort from our part. Sagittarius Rising has a Jupiter Cazimi in the 9th, but has the full moon in Aquarius in the 3rd house. 3rd house, the day-to-day workings, the short distance travels that we have, the connection with a community of people that may be present for us. Now, when we think about Aquarius as the sign of revolution, it can also be seen as the sign of liberation in this case. So with Jupiter in opposition with Pluto here, we can see that this full moon is allowing us liberation from an old psychological pattern, a truth coming into our present moment that can change the daily tonality of our experience. Like we said earlier, when the moon and Pluto come together, it can be a psychological revelation, a transformation of our mind, our emotional capabilities and capacities, all due to a truth that may come from a Jupiter Cazimi. The 9th house has higher learning, truth of religion, astrology, other forms of realities that we may not have had access to, can transform our experience from the outside in. When we can receive a teaching and genuinely apply it to our experience, we can notice life differently. On this channel, friends, I don't usually share about my own personal life, but just to give you an understanding, when we think about life and when we begin to receive impressions, when we begin to receive teachings, they change us. And for anybody who thinks and believes that they know who they are and chooses to block other teachings out, chooses to shun things, we can begin to notice that there is a truth in everything. And when we can open our heart to life, to reality, this is how we begin to find ourselves completely. As Sagittarius rising, notice where you may have been blocking yourself from a learning, blocking yourself from a teaching, from a religion, from a form of spiritual experience, from the standpoint, the viewpoint of another person. When we can let these people, these things, these experiences and teachings into our reality, we can notice what we are and what we are not. And anything that we have learned is simply a tool, a skill, but it is not us. We are separate from all of these things. And this may be the truth that you can find, that we are separate from our belief. We are different than our teaching. Sagittarius rising, notice how your day begins to transform, how your understanding of life, how you connect with people begins to change. Capricorn rising, you have this full moon in the second house of skills, of assets. We can also see this as a place of the things that belong to us. When we have a full moon in the second house, we can notice how we receive from the collective, how we allow our bodies to gain our own experience, to gain the things that we have in this life. When we think about the second house, it is all the things that are connected to us. Of course, we think about the sixth house and we think about the physical body, but we must also think about the second house and begin to consider the physical body as well. The physical body is an asset that we have, an asset that we use to be of service to the community around us. We have a particular level of energy that we have access to. And as Capricorn rising, the ruler of your chart, the ruler of this full moon as well, Saturn is in the fourth house, in your place of solitude. So there's something behind the scenes that you are learning, something behind the scenes that you get to experience that shifts the tides of your understanding, that shifts the tides of your psychological framework around your assets. Maybe there was greed that was present in this old way of being. And as Jupiter Cazimi came in, as Jupiter is died and is reborn in the throne room of the king in the eighth house of other people's money, maybe we realize that there's something that we need to give. There's something that we need to share. There's some debt that we need to pay. And this Pluto conjoining this full moon gives us an experience to realize this. This energy is present in this place for us to realize something about ourselves. The give and take, the push and pull of how we share and how we receive for Capricorn Risings. Notice what needs to be let go of, what needs to be received. Aquarius Rising, friends, you have this full moon in the first house of your person, your character, your identity. And a full moon is a culmination point. We've reached the heights of some experience. With Pluto in the first house, Pluto has been revealing things since it entered into this first house, depending on where planets may land in our astrology. how it's come into connection with our chart ruler at a point, how Jupiter is in opposition in our seventh house in a Cazimi. And Jupiter Cazimi in the seventh house can bring forward a relationship, bring forward something very positive in a relationship that has opened the doors for us to see ourselves separately. Now, as a Aquarius rising loves the collective, wants to connect and share with the collective. But when Aquarius chooses to focus on the collective, Aquarius can forget the person. Now, when you think about it like that, it doesn't start to make sense until it's broken down. The collective is everyone all together, right? But each individual person needs something separate. So here's an opportunity with Jupiter Cazimi in the seventh house to notice what each person may need. As Saturn is retrograde in the third house, we can notice how our daily action needs to change, how our connection with ourselves, even subconsciously, needs to be transformed so that way we can show up in these one-on-one relationships, that we can be present in this way, because there is riches, there is wealth to be attained, genuine wealth to be attained, not only of financial well-being but of true character revelation. Aquarius rising. And here we reach Pisces rising. Pisces rising experiences this full moon in the 12th house. And a 12th house full moon can be seen in our dreams. As we always think about Pisces, we can tend to think of Pisces as the mystic, right? One of the intuitive and even psychic signs of the zodiac. But the ruler of Pisces is Jupiter, undergoing the Cazimi in the sixth house. And as Jupiter undergoes this Cazimi in that place of sacrifice, we can notice how we need to share ourselves. What must we give of ourselves in order to rely on and receive the collective in a way that we don't know we need? A lot of the times, especially in this society here, this Western society, we take on a lot. We fill our plate, and we think that we need to do everything all on our own. But there is a collective of people who we can find support in, and maybe there's many times that we don't see these people. Maybe there's many times that we feel like we need to carry the burden on our own for whatever reasons. Maybe there was a trauma that caused us to feel this way. Maybe there was a form of, we can even call it a form of pride that causes us to want to do all the things ourselves, so that way we can receive the whatever. I can't even think of the word of it for it right now, but when we want to do all of the work in order to receive all of the glory for the things that we've achieved, it's important for us to notice that life just doesn't show up for us like that. Maybe the lesson is to receive. Maybe the lesson is to ask for help. The ruler of this full moon in Aquarius is Saturn, and it's in our second house of our assets. And just like we spoke about earlier, the physical body is one of our assets. And since Saturn's retrograde right here, right now, in the second house, we need to take into consideration ourselves, our skills. We need to take a moment and notice where we can rely on others around us. How can we benefit from expressing our need for support? A lot of the times, the Jupiter Cazimi helps us to think we got it, to help us feel like we got it. We don't need help. But a full moon in Aquarius in a conjunction with Pluto can reveal some things to us, the truth of necessary support. So notice this Pisces rising. Notice where the support can come from for us, and how we can benefit from such opposition. Now, friends, this concludes our horoscopes for the day. Please remember, friends, if you like this kind of content, to subscribe, to like the video, to even share it with your friends, you know. It's very good for my channel. It helps the algorithm, helps more people like you see the video. So please subscribe. Hope you're having a nice day, friends. And I'll see you soon. This is Casey with Aligned Astrology. Until the next time.